thank you for this very informative lecture that you gave. Thanks a lot.
Thanks to you.
Okay, thank you. I am going to announce the last speaker for tonight. I'm inviting Ridah Shanavas from Oakridge International School in India to deliver her talk on the high prevalence of multimorbid, non-communicable diseases in the cohorts of Telangana, India. Rania?
Thank you, Ms. Annette. I would like to start by thanking the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present and everyone here for giving me their time. Today, I will be talking about the high prevalence of non-communicable diseases in the cohorts of Telangana, which is a state in India. This study was made possible with the joint efforts of MRM College of Pharmacy, Science Institute of Pharmacy, Lions Club International, and the Synapse Foundation. I would like to acknowledge all the volunteers, pharmacy students, my co-authors, and the participants. I'll be segmenting my presentation into 4 parts: background, which includes the objectives of the study, the methodology we followed, the results, and the discussion. I'll start with the background. So NCDs, that is non-communicable diseases, are diverse group of chronic diseases that are not communicable, which means you cannot catch them from another person. They're defined as diseases that last for long periods of time and generally progress slowly. They're found to be the major cause of adult mortality and morbidity worldwide. Now, the NCD spectrum. Non-communicable diseases are defined by the World Health Organization, WHO, as Group 2 diseases. These are distinguished from Group 1 diseases, which includes communicable maternal, perinatal, and nutritional conditions, and Group 3 diseases, which are unintentional and intentional injuries. Having said that, the cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, chronic respiratory diseases, and cancers contribute to the majority of NCD deaths worldwide. The risk factors of NCDs can be categorized into four groups: behavioral, metabolic, social, and non-modifiable factors. Each of these individually and cumulatively have a large impact. That is, for example, tobacco use alone contributes to 7.2 million deaths. High blood pressure is a leading risk factor, contributing to 17% annual deaths. And though the social and non-modifiable factors cannot be the primary targets of interventions, they remain important factors since they affect and partly determine the effectiveness of many prevention and treatment approaches. Globally, NCDs contribute to 70% of annual deaths, with deaths due to cardiovascular diseases leading the pack. This, in terms of numbers, is 40 million deaths in any given year. Unfortunately, 15 million of these are premature. That is, they fall under the age group of 30 to 69 years. India, the country I come from, is wanting to be the capital of diabetes. It is believed that 10.4% of Indians are pre-diabetic. 65% of deaths are from NCDs, of which 25% are from cardiovascular diseases. The state of Telangana, the region of today's conversation, has close to 17% prevalence rate, which is much higher than the national average prevalence of 11.62%. Recognizing the epidemic impact of NCDs, 30% reduction by 2030 is the SDG target, and accordingly, many member countries, including India, are striving to achieve the 9 goals shown in the presentation. Multiple initiatives by both Indian government and the NGOs, from enrolling community workers to installing diagnostic and treatment clinics in primary care settings and areas of mass gatherings, to educational workshops, is being attempted. However, in spite of national and state level programs, the diversity of India makes the aggregate data sets difficult to be fully leveraged in implementing initiatives on the group. As an example, the disparity to healthcare access can be addressed by providing free medication, yet a shift in focus is needed from treatment to prevention for a large-scale impact to be seen. The system is gearing to address the integrated continuum of care so that the efforts in each segment can have grassroots accountability to identify high-risk individuals and follow through them. Accordingly, we hypothesize that a high prevalence of NCDs in Telangana could be due to the region-specific risk profile across the 4 risk segments we spoke about earlier. Thus, we started the study with 4 broad objectives: define the prevalence, assess the presence of different risk factors, and then hopefully identify the high-risk groups and potential interventions that may be needed for this group. For the methodology, similar to any epidemiological study, we adopted 4 key steps to our study. First, we chose the suburban region reflecting urbanization, relatively lower socioeconomic segment, and an equal spread of culture, that in this case is religion. We adopted the WHO stepwise survey, which was then used by the trained pharmacy students to collect data from residents through a door-to-door in-person survey method after obtaining the informed consent form. Post-cleaning of the raw data sets, descriptive statistical analysis was conducted using SPSS software. Now for the results, genetic and cultural background. Of the interviewed individuals, our sample size was 2,385, 54.5% followed Islam, while 45.5% followed Hinduism. Religion here can be considered as a surrogate for microenvironment of the individuals. The female gender was dominating with 64.1%. In terms of age distribution, 15% of individuals were 30 years old, 65.5% belonged to the 30 to 60-year-old category, and 19.5% were more than 60 years old. Only 18.1% of the individuals had post-education. 40% of the individuals were employed, most of them being self-employed, that is in a disorganized sector. As for having health insurance, 73.8% did not have public or private insurance, or even a white card, which is a system in
because of net issue, might be she just disconnected. We are trying to connect.
Are you going to try to get her on?
I'll try to share my screen again.
Yes, please.
Yes.
So for the socioeconomic background, only 18.1% of individuals had post-secondary education. 40.2% of individuals were employed. Can you see my screen?
Can you share your screen?
Let me try again. Can you see my screen now?
No. Not yet.
Sorry, I'll try again. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'll try presenting again. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, we can see.
I'll start with the socioeconomic background. So for socioeconomic background, only 18.1% of individuals had post-secondary education. 40.2% of individuals were employed, most of them being self-employed, that is in the disorganized sector. As for having health insurance, 73.8% did not have public or private insurance, or even a white card, which is a system in parts of India that provides access to government economic initiatives. This reflects the overall lower socioeconomic status of the studied population. When asked about behavioral risk factors, especially about smoking and alcohol consumption, majority of them indicated being non-smokers and non-alcoholics. Tobacco use and alcohol consumption are the 2 primary behavioral risk factors which the government of India is tackling. Culturally, since these are still considered as taboo issues, we cannot be assured that respondents have fully disclosed this information. Poor diet, that is a poor intake of fruits, vegetables, and proteins, was found across the studied population. With urbanization, at-home physical activity was very less. The data indicated that physical activity was directly correlating with their work profile. Hence, these factors are not presented here for paucity of time. Overall prevalence of the metabolic risk factors seen in the study was on the higher end, with 40.2% of individuals indicating that they were diagnosed with high blood pressure, 6.4% with dyslipidemia, and 25.4% with high blood glucose. Sphygomanometer-based assessments, which were conducted by the trained pharmaceutical students, indicated 35% of the individuals to be hypertensives. We then wanted to understand the type of NCDs commonly seen in this subpopulation and their relative prevalence. Diabetes was seen in 25.4% of the subjects, while cardiovascular diseases and asthma was found in 7% of the studied population. Cancer was found in 1% of the respondents. Interestingly, of the other NCDs evaluated, thyroid problems were seen in 0.8% of the individuals. A family history of high blood pressure with high blood glucose was the highest, and high blood glucose was the highest, with 28.2% and 18.1% studied individuals indicating a close family member being diagnosed and or managed for high blood pressure and high blood glucose respectively. Interestingly, family history of dyslipidemia and obesity in the studied population was on the lower end. Family history of diabetes and cardiovascular diseases was the highest, with 18.1% and 7.6% respectively in studied individuals. The less spoken NCDs, like thyroid disorders, was seen in 6.5% of the families, almost on par with the family history of CVD, which was 7.6%. Please note that the one indicated in the earlier slide, the thyroid disorders were found in 0.8% of the population, were almost similar to the levels of cancer. Asthma and other lung disorders, such as COPD, were also more common, with 4.6% of individuals indicating that at least one of their family members had asthma and or COPD. Additionally, cancer was seen in 2.4% of the families. The chi-square analysis indicated that hypertension was statistically significantly associated with gender, religion, increasing age, and family history. Individuals who had insurance have higher percentage of hypertension, while the individuals with higher education had lower levels of raised blood pressure, highlighting the importance of access in diagnosis and understanding in terms of disease management. Dyslipidemia is statistically significantly associated with gender, religion, age, with women, Muslims, and individuals with increasing age showing higher propensity to cholesterol issues. Cardiovascular diseases have been associated with gender, religion, increasing age, and a family history of heart diseases. Diabetes was associated with religion, increasing age, and family history. Individuals having access to insurance had higher rates of diabetes, while individuals with higher education had relatively lower levels, though they're still very high compared to the normal range. Women and Muslims had 2 times more prevalence of chronic respiratory diseases such as asthma and COPD. There was also a proportional increase in prevalence with increasing age. 10.7% of the individuals who had cancer indicated to have had a family history of cancer, with 0.7% did not have a family history of any cancer, indicating that individuals with a family history of cancer have 15 times more propensity to get cancer. Discussion. To summarize the study results, diabetes was seen in 25% of the subjects, while cardiovascular diseases and asthma was found in 7% of the studied population. High blood pressure is the most prevalent metabolic risk factor, 40%, followed by high blood glucose, which was 25%. While CVD and CRD are similar to national levels, the prevalence of diabetes and blood pressure are much higher than reported earlier from multiple regions. Recent studies by the government of Telangana, the state we discussed earlier, released survey results from 13,000 individuals, wherein hypertension was found to be in 40% of the individuals. Another foundation called the Helping Hand Foundation also shared similar results from their community clinic. Thus, the second takeaway is that gender, female, age over the age of 30 years, and the religion, that is Muslims, have a strong correlation with metabolic risk factors and the NCDs, except for cancer. Individuals with insurance had higher prevalence of raised blood pressure and blood glucose, while higher education groups had lower incidences of all NCDs except for cancer and thyroid disorders. Third, there is a strong correlation with family history for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, thyroid disorders, and for cancer. Family history of NCDs also increased the prevalence of multimorbid state. The key recommendations from our study, over and above what is already being done, would be to highlight the need for an introduction of proactive measures to combat the risk of NCDs in women. While genetics is always considered critical, we should utilize this data to implement preventive and disease management strategies. Lastly, given the interconnectivity of the metabolic risk factors and multiple NCDs, patient-centric efforts are needed to ensure reduction in both morbidity and mortality with NCDs. Thank you for giving me your time and listening to me.
Thank you. This was very informative. I do know that in Saudi also, I can see, because remember, most of the people are Muslims here. And what I see is that the way they eat, I don't know where they put all those food, but they are more diabetics here, more cardiac diseases. And what I also saw is that children is 19 years old and they're on antihypertensive medication. And what is very evident in your thing is females. I never thought that females is at the higher risk than males, and they are much younger than what we actually think.
Yeah, good to know. That is the same in Saudi.
Yeah, it's the same picture that we see, but we see a lot of diabetics, a lot of heart cardiac problems, and you actually did the same type of study in India, and you find the same.
Yeah.
Is there any further question from the floor?